and welcome to the Keep It Local Maine podcast, where we interview local business owners and Maine residents to learn more about what they do, who and what inspires them, and how they use experiences to steer them into the future.
My name is Kimberly Regalinski.
And I'm Todd Regalinski.
And we are the publishers of Keep It Local Maine, a local magazine that helps showcase local businesses to the people in and around their communities. Thank you for tuning in to our weekly podcast that you can subscribe to on Podbeam, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You can learn more about us at keepitlocalmaine.com, and you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, and through the links in the show notes. In this episode, we are so excited to be talking with musician Zach Jones.
Zach Jones is a Portland, Maine-based musician, having spent many years as lead guitarist / backing vocalist for the popular rock band As Fast As. In March of 2010, Jones released his first solo album, Fading Flowers, followed by Broken Record in 2011, Things Were Better in 2012, The Days in 2013, and Love What You Love in 2014. In 2019 and 20, he has released a series of singles and EPs, the most recent of which is Must Be On My Way and I'll Be Taking Care of You. He's also the co-host of Spencer and Zach Explore the Universe, a podcast he records with fellow Maine musician Spencer Albee. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Yes, welcome.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're glad you're here.
It's wonderful to be here.
Here is in a remote-ish
That's right.
way, but
Here in the same spot that I was when I woke up this morning.
the wonders of these days. So could you just I'm always curious about what people's kind of musical upbringing is like. So could you kind of tell us, how did you get started in music, and who are some of your early influences?
Sure. So my earliest influence, who is still one of my biggest influences, was Michael Jackson. Pretty much the Thriller album, we had two copies of it in my household, a copy on vinyl and a copy on cassette. And of course, cassette was the newer technology at the time. So my older brother and I would fight over who got the cassette. And then my parents made a dub of the cassette. So we had the original copy and the dub. And then we'd fight over who got the original and who got the dub.
Nice.
But so, yeah, my cousin tells me of a memory that she has of me, barely walking and speaking, singing all of the words to Beat It. I don't remember that, but I believe it. But so that was I think the earliest, falling in love with music, even though I wasn't fully cognizant of it at the time. And then, getting older, newer technology. I remember getting a Walkman and getting the Best of the Beach Boys and listening to that all the time. But still, it wasn't until I was probably 12 or 13 when I got into the Beatles, and that really changed everything. It was basically there was that window of time between when I was 5 and 12 where there was no record player in the house, and then we got one of those multi-component all-in-one things that had a record player on the top. Mm-hmm. And so I started digging through my parents' records, and I found Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and it just blew my mind. I was like, I want to play guitar. I want to write songs. I want to be able to sing like this. I want to learn how it's possible to do something that is like this. So that changed everything. My mom had a piano and a guitar in the house because she played a little bit of both. And so I pulled her guitar out of the case and was just like, show me. And so she taught me, the 4 or 5 chords that she knew that she plays all her folk songs with, and kind of just took it and ran from there. And I'd always we used to have our piano in the living room right in front of the front door. So I always used to, even before I knew anything about music, every time I'd walk by the piano, I'd sit down and just pick out melodies on it and stuff. But as soon as I started actually learning music, all of a sudden it was just, this whole world opened up to me where I was like, oh, I get it. I understand how all of these things are coming together now. And, or not that I understand all of it, still learning, obviously, but just the passion for it and the, ability to figure out why a C chord is a C chord on the piano and also on the guitar and also on whatever other instrument you happen to be working with. And yeah, that's kind of been it. Just constantly trying to unlock musical secrets.
That's awesome.
Nice. Have you had any formal lessons or anything like that? Any music theory training?
I have. So yeah, when I first started playing, it was guitar was the first instrument that I took seriously. And as I said, my mom taught me what she knew. And then from there, I started getting songbooks that would have those little chord charts in it. So if I, got to something I didn't know, it was right there. And then in high school, I had there was a voice teacher that came once a week. So I took voice lessons for a year or two in high school. We also had music theory courses in high school. So I took, ear training and music theory in high school, as well as the voice teacher that came. And then I also took piano lessons for a year while I was in high school. And then I took a year off between high school and my brief stint at college. But I ended up doing a year at Berklee College of Music before I dropped out to just play rock and roll.
Wow.
So,
Nice.
Well, it's kind of the best of both worlds. You get a little Berklee cred, and then you get your rock cred. So.
yeah, it's
Nice.
there's I think Berklee is the only school that people look at you like more positively if you say that you dropped out.
I was gonna say it's kind of like a rite of passage in some ways. Like I'm sure like they have, here's our graduates and here's our dropouts.
yeah, it's because there's like this feeling of if you dropped out of Berklee to go play music, you probably got scooped up because you were good, and people wanted you to just get right to work.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure there are a fair amount of people that just drop out because they're like, this is expensive and I don't like it. But
Yeah.
but there are a lot of people that graduate and do great as well. I don't want to short sell the value of a good education.
Yes. So let me ask you this: what was the writing and recording process for your latest EP?
So everything I do these days is an exercise of trimming budget. Just it's getting harder and harder to turn music into a product that that generates money.
yeah.
So the less I can spend while I'm making it, then the better that evens out on the other end. But obviously, I still want it to sound good and all that stuff. So my latest handful of releases have all been home recorded with me playing everything that I can. I've been using some drum programming stuff. Like GarageBand actually has a great feature called Drummer, where it's all actual drum samples of actual real drums being played in a room and all that. But of course, you can time adjust it. You can get your kick pattern right where you want it and put your fills right where you want it and adjust all that stuff and adjust the feel. So I've actually gotten really, really good at getting a very natural drum performance out of the computer, basically.
Nice.
And then basically once I have that done, I'll just layer everything else on top of it. I usually, I'll write the song on acoustic guitar or piano, whichever one. And then I will just record a very basic, to a metronome playing through the form of the song. And then I'll use that to put the drum pattern on and get that mapped out. And once the drum pattern's there, I'll just start with bass guitar, I layer that on. And once I've got bass and drums, I can just totally get rid of that first kind of song map recording that I did and start building from there. So yeah, it's usually ends up just becoming okay, what does this need now? If it was written around like a specific guitar lick, I'll, get that in there. And then, just kind of keep listening to it and see what I feel like it needs to make the choruses bigger than the rest of it, make sure the dynamics still work, which with programmed drums, that was a big thing that took a while to get used to working with, is to get a not just a solid performance out of that performance. I'm using air quotes, you can't see it. But yeah, to also make it dynamic, make sure it's quiet where it needs to be quiet and loud where it needs to be loud, and it sounds like a person doing that. And then because I'm playing all the instruments on top of that, make sure that I try to match that and exaggerate it even so it comes through in the rest of the arrangement.
Nice.
And then I usually hire my friend Dan Destiny, who's based in Los Angeles. I hire him to mix. And also Mark Rains, also based in Los Angeles. I know I'm on the Keep It Local Maine podcast, talking about LA
We're
engineers.
expanding to Los Angeles in 2021 because the world doesn't make sense anymore. So we figure we're just going to shoot for that.
Well, I have been based out of LA for the past 8 years, so these are connections I made there.
Totally.
I am back in Maine now, obviously.
Nice.
So when you go to write a song, and this is actually really cool, I think is on this latest EP, and you had mentioned on some previous EPs as well, you put the demo version of the song as kind of an additional tracks, which I think is really cool because I'm always interested in how songs started. What kind of comes first, the chicken and the egg, and then how things progress. So I think it's really cool how on Must Be On My Way, listening to the demo version of that, it's just guitar and there's the lyrics are just you kind of humming the melody. which I thought was so cool because I've never been. I'm like, then okay, how do you then translate that? Was there no kind of lyrical hook first, or was it just, hey, I think I've got something, but I'm just going to hum until I get what I really want?
So yeah, that one was definitely I'm going to hum until I get what I want. The process is always a little bit different because I feel like a lot of times, like I have just a page of notes on my phone where, like, if I hear a phrase or something pops into my head, I'll just type it down on that thing. And sometimes I'll go through and read it and be like, why did I think that was a good idea? That's really stupid. But every now and then I'll find a phrase or a fresh one will just pop into my head where I'll be like, oh, I can make that into a song. But Must Be On My Way was started with nothing. I think I was just tinkering on the guitar one day and came across something. I was like, ooh, that sounds nice. And then I just started singing a melody to it. And yeah, that was just a hit record on the voice memo recorder just to make sure I had it. But the melody was catchy enough that, as I'm walking around and doing other stuff, it's still in my head. And all of a sudden those just blah, blah syllables that I was using when I capture the idea start kind of shaping themselves into words. And then once I have like a basic idea of, what it is, like the rest of the song kind of comes together. And I find I usually write sort of chronologically. I very rarely need to go in and reorder like my verses. Usually it's like, if it's a story, I'm pretty good at getting the beginning, middle, and end in there and without having to go. And I do go back and change out, certain lyrics here and there. And sometimes I do it not even on intentionally. Sometimes I'll record a song, like when I get to doing the final vocal, I'll sing through it, and then I'll go back and look at my lyric sheet and be like, what I just sang was not even what was on the lyric sheet. Like, I don't even know where that came from. But if it came naturally, it must be the right thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You see someone will change they'll do a wrong lyric or something to someone else's song that they didn't write. And they're like, what do they know? They just wrote it.
Yeah. Well, I do that to my own songs. So.
You get in less trouble that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Zach, I mean, this is the question of the year. What is the biggest challenge kind of that you face right now as a musician?
Uncertainty. I mean, the whole life as a musician is sort of built around uncertainty.
Yeah.
But at least there's like the week to week or day to day stuff. Like in the past, it was like, okay, I'm looking at my calendar. I've got a month full of gigs. I'll get through those, and hopefully next month I'll have another month full of gigs.
Right.
But now it's without gigs even being an option. I'm just looking at an empty calendar and freaking out a little bit about, as I said, like releasing music once it's streaming on Spotify or wherever, Apple Music, whatever. People are streaming it, and that's great, but that only generates a fraction of a penny per stream.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm, paying bills or putting savings away from my earnings from streaming music.
Right.
And it used to be, you print up the physical copies, you go play the show. Hopefully you get a decent guarantee or a good, door take from the show. And hopefully people like it. And even if they don't listen to your CDs, they'll just buy a CD because, people might buy the CD just to support you and go home and still listen to it on Spotify, but they'll feel good that they put $10 in the pocket of the artist while they were at the show. And with vinyl coming back, I've got 3 albums pressed on vinyl, and that's great too. Sometimes, I'll play a show and I'll sell a handful of records and I'll walk away feeling pretty good about that. But like, that's not an option anymore.
Right.
So that's kind of scary. And, there are, like, I've been doing the live stream shows, and people tend to be very generous tipping, which is excellent. And people do buy stuff, which is also excellent.
That's awesome.
But I also feel like I can't, normally if you're on tour or you're whatever, you can play to a different audience every night, play around and reach different people. And, technically with the internet, you can do that as well. But, when you're playing through Facebook or Instagram, you tend to play to the same audience, just because they're the people that are already invested and they get the notifications when you're going live and all that. And so if you do it too often, it's like, diminishing returns.
Right.
So also it turns out it's terrifying. It's weird that I feel like I can comfortably stand on stage, in front of 10 people or 1,000 people and be completely comfortable. But as soon as I hit go live on my camera in my room by myself, I'm like, my heart starts beating, my mind starts racing. Like, I'm just like, what am I doing?
Do you think it's because there's no immediate feedback? You're kind of wondering what people are doing or thinking?
It is like, yeah. I mean, I feel like generally, when you're rehearsing for a show, obviously you put all of your thought process and into the preparation, and then when you're actually performing, you sort of like let loose in the moment and you react to what's happening in the room. And sometimes you're thinking about something completely different. You might be looking at the people in the front, like, you're like, oh, that guy's dancing funny. Oh, that's a cool T-shirt he's wearing. Or, oh, that girl's cute. And you're not even thinking about the songs. You're just like in the moment, and it's great. But I find when I'm alone in the room doing the live streams, my brain still goes to that space where I'm thinking about other things, which is weird because it's the same room that I was practicing in and was able to stay focused when I was practicing. But as soon as I go live, I'm thinking about what people, on the other side of the camera might look like or might be doing or thinking. And all of a sudden I'm just like, where am I in this song? What are the next words? And I freak out. There's not like that reassuring sense of, oh, you're not getting that energy back from the crowd that you would normally get where you're like, oh, I'm doing a good job because they're dancing and clapping and singing along. It's just like, oh no, where am I? What am I singing? Like,
No, that makes sense. I mean, I can see that. That
oh
totally
yeah.
makes sense.
I mean, because then if you see that something isn't working, because I think, musicians or just in general, people can think, oh no, everything is fine, until you see someone else's reactions like, oh no, it isn't fine. I better change up what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And you can kind of adjust, I imagine. But if you don't have any feedback aside from, oh, I just got a like, or someone commented LOL, or well, what are you laughing at? What's so funny? Is it me?
I'm all self-conscious. Do I have something on my shirt? What's going on?
Did I remember to trim my nose hair? Oh no! Oh, I'm sitting like 3 inches away from my monitor. Oh no, that looks like a redwood sticking out of my nose. No.
There's also, you're very exposed. Because there's no, if people are listening over their television or they're listening through headphones or whatever, it's not like they're at a club where there's, people murmuring around them and bar glasses clinking and stuff like that. It's just your music completely exposed.
Yeah.
And then there's no, during those like empty spaces where you'd normally, you finish a song and there's applause and you take a second to touch up the tuning on the guitar real quick, or take a sip of your water or something like that. It's like that space is no longer being filled by the audience. It's just empty. And so I feel awkward even like reaching to like drink water. It's like people are just looking at me. There's no sound. They're probably hearing me gurgle and slurp.
Oh yeah. I mean, alternately, the speakers that most people are listening to there aren't the best, so the sound quality isn't great, but then it's going to pick up every mouth noise possible and everything else. Yeah. So now that we're talking about live music a little bit, well, as much as we can these days, what are some of your favorite Maine-related music memories?
Oh, man. So as you mentioned, I do that podcast with Spencer Albee. And Spencer and I used to play together in a band called As Fast As. And prior to that, we were called Rocktopus.
Yep. I believe I actually think I might still have that CD somewhere around here.
I think it's good. I haven't listened to it in a while, but I think we're a good band. We're still finding our. I guess we're always finding our way in a lot of different senses. But
We
I think we had a very good group, especially as fast as. It's that whole. I was 21 when I started playing with Rocktopus. Or I turned 21 during that time. So, and, Spencer was kind of coming off the back of having been in Rustic Overtones and that stuff. And so he already had a lot of local connections to get, to help expedite getting our songs on the radio and getting press coverage and all that stuff. And people really enjoyed the music. So we built a local following pretty quickly. And, it really felt like that trajectory that you see in like the movies about a band that go from like zero to, the biggest band in the world. I mean, obviously we only went to a bigger band in Portland, Maine, not the biggest band in the world, but it's still, that whole time period was really special, doing like Old Port Fests and, playing the CYY patio and stuff like that. And just really feeling like, you know, feeling like we had a chance to be like the Beatles of Portland for a second or something.
That's awesome.
It all comes back to the Beatles.
Yeah, always. I mean, that's still, I think my dreams are a touch more realistic now, as far as like, okay, no band will ever be like the Beatles.
Now you're just trying to be in Wings.
Yes. Not well. I mean,
Oh wait, I'm sorry. That's Spencer, I think.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, even that's Wings were like the first arena rock band. Even that's like a stretch now these days.
That is true. Now that I think about that, I'm not trying to shortchange Wings in any way for any Wings fans out there.
Yeah. No, I feel like I used to want to be in the Beatles. You know, I wanted to be in the band that was the best band, that had the sold the most records and played to the biggest audiences. And obviously, I'd still like that, but I understand that is probably not a realistic goal in this time of the music business, and also just me being me at this age and all that. So my new goal is I look at somebody like Elvis Costello, and I'm like, that would be cool to just be a guy that has a solid fan base, writes great songs, is respected as a songwriter and a lyricist. You know, can go to a town with a band or solo and play to a theater, you know, of 500 to 2,000 people in any town across the world. That sounds pretty good to me. Like, I don't need to play Shea Stadium. If I can go to a city and play, you know, if I can go to any city in the U.S. and play to like 200 people, I would be thrilled.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
If you could, like, quick advice, what quick advice would you give to young musicians?
The first thing would be, don't get into music to get rich. That was
solid.
Yeah, that was never a thing. I mean, even in the 80s, when you were seeing, you know, the hair metal bands driving around in, you know, in limousines and stuff like that, it was like that was all a manufactured image. There was lots of money being generated, but they weren't making it.
Right.
Yeah. And now they're all driving the limousines for other people.
Yes, exactly. Like,
with no hair.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably wigs even then on in a lot of cases. But beyond that, is if you are going to get into it, take it seriously, and you know, practice and study other people. I think listen to as much music as possible, absorb as many different influences as you can, and and learn as much about music. Put as much time into rehearsing your instrument, and take it seriously. Yeah.
Right on.
So how would you, at this time, or just in general, how do you define success in music or in life?
That's a tough question, because I feel like, I mean, probably in most professions, but definitely in music, even when you're at the top of your game, you don't think you're successful. I watched a documentary about U2 called From the Sky Down, about how they made their Achtung Baby record, but it starts out with them at the end of the Joshua Tree tour. And as you know, the Joshua Tree was, I think, the second biggest selling record the year it came out. That tour was enormous. But so basically the documentary starts out, they're playing in this arena. It's packed, you know, everybody's singing along. The balconies are shaking, or rafters are shaking. And then it follows the band backstage after the show, and they're like, oh, we blew it. You know, if only we'd hit this, if only we'd done this. It's like, wow, U2 at the very top still just has the same reaction after a show as I had after playing in front of 10 people at the Big Easy or something like that. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're never actually in touch with what success is, because it always seems like it's in front of us. I know my friend John Nolan, who co-produced a couple of my records, he has released a couple great solo records, and also played in a band called Say Zuzu that was one of the bigger bands out of the Seacoast area for a while. And I've had that talk with him before. I remember when we were working on the records that we did together, it was like, oh, if only I could do this, or only if I could reach this level, like if only I could do this. And he was like, you're already successucil. He's like, you know, you're already playing shows, you're already releasing records that people are into. You're like, you're working as a full-time musician. It's like, you know what, you know, you can ask for more, but you're doing more than so many other people are doing.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a matter of perspective. Because I never feel like I'm as successful as I want to be, and I'm sure and you two didn't either. So
I mean, and just as how big U2 was when they did that, when they did Rattle and Hum, Bruce Springsteen got cut out of that documentary.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's how big they were, that they were like, nah, we don't need to have Springsteen in this. Like,
Yeah.
really? Really? Oh, well, you guys are doing pretty good for yourselves, I guess. So I guess my another question I have is, who or what inspires you?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm constantly, especially these days that I've got more time, I'm constantly listening to music. And so I'm always hearing, I mean, I've been building my vinyl collection even bigger than it was really since March because I have time to sit around and listen to it.
Good
And,
man.
you know, I've got the stereo set up now where I can actually just sit and relax and the speakers are spread out. And so I'm hearing things in music that production tricks and stuff like that, like certain things where I'm like, oh, look at that. There's a piano panned right and a piano panned left, and they're doing two different things. I never noticed that when I was listening to it, you know, on a different, when I was driving or listening to it on even headphones sometimes, I didn't pick up on that. So that just like hearing old records and picking up production tricks has been really inspiring now, especially now that I know I'm probably condemned to recording records in the basement for a while. It's nice to pick up on new production tricks.
Nice.
That is true.
But you know, a lot of people that I work with, like we had Steve Drown on our podcast last week, and Steve has been one of those guys that when I first started recording with Rocktopus, he was the engineer and producer on those sessions, and he has always been one of those guys. If I have a question about a band, like, you know, who played guitar on that record by this artist that came out in 1975, you know, he'll know that answer. But also if I'm like, how do I get that guitar tone that's on this song, on this thing? And I'll be like, oh, they played this guitar through that amp.
Yeah.
So he's always been one of those guys. And, you know, John Wyman, also another local engineer producer, is always great with an answer to a question like that. And he's actually also been a guest on our podcast. I'm still constantly learning from Spencer every time, you know, I talk to him more than anybody else these days. And he's always dropping in, you know, knowledge on me that I'm like, oh, I did not know that. You know?
That's so cool.
Yeah. So there's just, a lot of people like that, and all the musicians that I get to play with or got to play with, especially, you know, when I was based out of LA, I was doing a lot of for hire stuff. I was doing a lot of bass player for hire, and was playing with all kinds of musicians and, just getting to pick people's brains and see people's approach to their instruments and kind of make mental notes and go home and try to copy what they were doing.
Nice.
So I'm going to go off script for just 1 second because I've got the ambush question. This has to be part of every interview where you throw out the thing no one's expecting. I know that the answer to this question already. If I were to ask you Beatles or Beach Boys, I already know what the answer would be, but would you even pause before answering Beatles, or would it be immediate?
I would pause, but it would be a very, very, very brief pause.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the Beach Boys I love almost as much as the Beatles. But when I think of the genius of Brian Wilson, I think of him still as the American Paul McCartney, which, you know, I guess that means there's only one Paul McCartney. But then in that band, there was also a John Lennon, George Harrison, Ringo Starr.
That is true. Yeah. And Ringo needs to get a little bit more love. That's just my one.
I feel like he's starting to get it a lot more these days. I think there's a lot of drummers that directly reference him all the time. You know, Dave Grohl is always talking about him, and they did that Rolling Stone article a while back where they interviewed each other, which is really interesting. Ringo and Grohl, and also like in 2009 when the Beatles catalog was remastered, which I think are the definitive versions of the Beatles albums right now. They really brought the drums to life, and without having to do any remixing or anything, just through the master. You know, you can hear the kick patterns more clearly and hear how he interlocks with the bass. And he's just got impeccable time and a really unique feel. His approach to drum fills is like nobody else's. And his appreciation for songcraft. You know, he is really like the songwriter's drummer, the way that so many of his drum patterns are definitive parts of the songs that he plays on. Like you can't play Ticket to Ride without doing that drum beat. You can't play Come Together without doing that drum beat. You know, they are as much a part of the song as the guitar line is, which I think he's probably one of the only drummers where you could mute all of the instruments on a Beatles song except for the drums and still be able to pinpoint exactly what song it is. I don't think you can say that for a lot of drummers.
Yeah, definitely not for probably not for poor Dennis Wilson either. So we'll give Ringo and the Beatles the edge.
Although I think Dennis was an underrated drummer too, but you're right. I mean, you couldn't solo any of the songs he played on, or not any of them. I'm sure there's some, but not as many. And also
Definitely.
Dennis, I think in some of the early 70s records, when he was abusing substances, and at one point I think he punched a wall and broke his hand, so he couldn't even play drums on a few of the records they did. And then of course like the Pet Sound stuff and like that era there, I think starting with Beach Boys Today, Brian stayed behind and produced those records with the Wrecking Crew while the Beach Boys were touring. So there's like, Dennis plays on all the early records, and there's like Hal Blaine plays on those Wrecking Crew recordings. It's like a handful of records. Then early 70s, I think not Blondie Chaplin, Ricky Fattar plays drums on a few of them. And then Dennis was back playing drums up until he passed away tragically. So,
Yeah.
So I always like to kind of wrap it up with this. We want to bring it back home. What would you say is kind of one of your favorite things about Maine? If you had to say, what is it about Maine that you love?
I love the sense of community. I always feel like, even though I moved away for almost 8 years, I would always make sure that I came back here for the month of December, and I always came back for a couple weeks in the summertime. And I always felt like I could walk right back in as if I never left.
Nice.
Just everybody welcomed me with open arms, and all my friends were ready to start laughing at the same jokes. And so that's been really important. I think is just that sense of community, which also makes me really sad now that my community anyway has been built around music venues, and those are all closed now. And who knows if they will get to open again if this continues. And then beyond that, just in general, like I love the change of the seasons, which obviously we don't really get in Los Angeles. So that's been one great thing about being home right now, is actually enjoying the fall for the first time in a long time, and actually seeing the leaves change, and the cool crisp autumn air.
Yes,
it's been nice.
yes.
Well, thank you very much,
Yes.
Zach. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day and then joining us and talking about music. Be sure that you follow the links in the show notes to all of Zach's music and his podcast as well, and stream his albums when you sleep.
Yes.
And just put those on repeat, and then also make sure that you download them as well, and make sure all those nickels and dimes that go, make sure they all go to Zach. Okay, don't rip that stuff off a torrent site. Go ahead and download it and make sure that money gets to Zach and support musicians. Thank you again. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. This has been fun. I hope I didn't bore you guys too much. But
Oh, no, it was fantastic. This was good. I feel like I learned quite a bit, actually.
Oh, that's good.
Me too. Me too. So you have yourself a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yes.
You as well. I appreciate it.
All right.